For as long as I can remember, my dad taught my sisters and I about the importance of family and community, specifically our duty to embrace our heritage and our ancestry, to honor those that came before us and those that will be there long after we're gone. He taught us about our own little unique culture that has withstood the test of time despite adversity. Now, he taught us about our Gullah Geechee roots. So because of him, I decided to do my senior project on Gullah Geechee culture. Now, in my own personal experience, people, whenever I'm having a conversation, people usually don't know anything about Gullah Geechee culture, or they haven't heard anything about it before. So here are some aspects of my own culture. The Gullah Geechee people are descendants of West African slaves that reside in the coastal regions of North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. Because of their isolation on rice plantations and plantations in general, they were able to cultivate a unique culture, one that has West African influences that can still be seen and heard today. For instance, you have the polyrhythms of Africa that can be heard in a Southern Baptist church on a Sunday. The beautifully woven sweetgrass baskets you'll see walking down the street in downtown Charleston. The delicious food that is just so savory and delicious, such as the shrimp and grits, that are a product of the ingenuity of the Gullah Geechee slaves. Their spirituality is unmatched due to their fierce belief in God and their wives' tales that are rooted in superstition and supernatural things of the outside world, things we don't understand. Stories that my father has passed on to me and my sisters. One of the main problems threatening this unique culture is gentrification. So this was my research topic. Gentrification disregards and displaces those native to an area that is supposed to be selectively edited from a hearth of culture and unity to an unrecognizable place that caters to an elite upper class. Well, what exactly is gentrification? Gentrification is the changing of an area to cater to those of a higher social class. Development occurs when investors see a place that can be revitalized so that way they can attract more people of a higher tax bracket, usually those of an upper middle class or higher. Now, those native to an area where gentrification is occurring, they can expect rising property taxes, rising values, rising rent. Basically, their homes become less affordable and many of them are often displaced, as evidenced by the NCRC's 13-year study that found a whopping 135,000 people were displaced, and that gentrification is rampant in coastal cities, which is where Gullah Geechee people reside. I also found in my research that the Gullah Geechee Cultural Corridor did some research, and they found out that places such as Hilton Head, St. Simon's Island, and Defusky Island, where all of us like to vacation over the spring and the summertime, were once predominantly occupied by members of the Gullah Geechee community. They were forced to leave because they could no longer afford to live there. They lost their land because of the rising property taxes. They were either bought out by developers or forced to sell the land because they could no longer afford to live there. In turn, there was a disconnect with the culture, a disconnect with tradition, and a disconnect with one's cultural identity. When you lose that, you lose the culture. So in order to preserve the culture, I felt as though one needs to immerse themselves in it fully and share it with other people and bring awareness. So to do that, I had to first find my mentors. One of my mentors was Miss Valerie McLaurin. She is a doctorate student and a teaching assistant at the University of Georgia who actually did research on my great-great-great-great-granduncle, who was a prominent Gullah Geechee figure by the name of John Bolts. So she jumped at the chance to help me when I asked her to be my mentor, and she was more than willing to give me all the resources necessary to do my research. My other mentor was Mrs. Ashley Whipple. I actually had her my freshman year at Greenbrier High School. She's an AP Human Geography teacher and an AP World teacher, and she graciously let me teach all 3 of her AP Human Geography classes about Gullah Geechee culture. Once I found my mentors, I had to immerse myself into the culture, so I ventured off to Sandy Island, South Carolina. Sandy Island is in Georgetown, South Carolina. It's a very small, isolated island that is home to 30 Gullah Geechee residents. When I went there, my tour guide by the name of Captain Rummy told us that Sandy Island was no stranger to gentrification and development. Developers came and they wanted to take the resources such as timber from the island, and they wanted to convert this beautiful, serene landscape into a golf course, as if we don't have enough of those. So the people all came together and they were able to save their land. After this, I went to Hasty Point Plantation and Milton Plantation, where my ancestors were kept as slaves, but they were still able to cultivate the unique culture that I touched on earlier in the presentation. After all of this, it was time to begin making a lesson plan. So I met with Mrs. Ashley Whipple over Christmas break, and we made a lesson plan that touched on the AP Human Geography standards in relation to migration, population, development, and culture specifically, which was one of the big units that we covered in the lesson. And I also, in addition to my PowerPoint as a learning aid for the AP Human Geography students, I thought that they needed something tangible to take home with them, so that way they would remember what they learned in class and have a little piece of Gullah Geechee culture to hang on to. So I made a brochure for them to take home. After all of this planning and hard work, it was finally time for me to teach the AP Human Geography classes. I taught all 3 of her classes, and I was met with a very positive reception from the students and Mrs. Whipple alike. They were all asking questions and participating in the discussions. They were intrigued and enamored by the aspects of the culture that I shared with them, including testimonies of the Gullah Geechee people and testimonies of my father. And seeing them actually engaged and actually wanting to learn more about my culture is a feeling that I will never forget, something I will forever be grateful for. Now, at the beginning of each class, I asked the students to raise their hands if they had ever heard of the Gullah Geechee people and the culture, and a whopping 3 people out of all 3 of the classes had heard of it, and I ended the day by sharing my culture with more people than I could have imagined when I first started this endeavor. But I felt as though that I could do more, so I went back to the shopping block and I began revising the brochure with Ms. McLaurin. We fixed some constructional issues, and I was able to make this brochure that I got approved to be in the media center on display during Black History Month. And it basically has the major aspects of Gullah Geechee culture on it, and the student body was able to take one to take home with them, and they were able to have a little piece of my culture to take with them and to learn about. With this project,